Chapter 1 starts off with Max, his sister Zoe, and his father, who remains nameless and is affectionately called Dad Puckett, moving to a new town. Dad Puckett has apparently told neither of his children that they were moving into a convenience store, and I would blame him for being a bad parent, except that this is a great way to get free labor out of your kids, so really capitalism is the biggest enemy here. Max and Zoe's fight pans to a great view of the town, but Max ruins the moment. Max, it turns out, has a habit of being snarky, but you can't really blame him because he's 12 and has probably had to deal with like every single kid in his grade going through the roar means I love you and dinosaur phase. And frankly, I would be cynical in his situation too. After exploring the first floor of their new house, the trio heads upstairs. Max finds out his room is pretty much the sketchiest thing he's ever seen in his life. But before he can make a snarky comment about it, Dad Puckett plays the "Your mother is dead, please refrain from crushing my dreams for 1 minute, dude" card. Also note that Max's mother has not been confirmed as dead yet in the comic, but several comments made by the characters imply it. Also the fact that this comic is literally about ghosts hints at it heavily. Dad Puckett then decides they've spent enough time moping about their probably dead maternal figure and calls for pizza, which makes everything better except for the fact that Max still has a hecka scary room. Come on, Max, your room is definitely not haunted. Like, what do you think you are, some kind of protagonist? Also, there's definitely no foreshadowing here. Also, it is confirmed here that Dad Puckett actually is a bad parent because Max has a flip phone instead of a smartphone like a normal kid. Max somehow manages to text a paragraph on his flip phone to his friend Sam, who makes him think about his feelings. But before he can think about his feelings, this guy shows up. At this point, if I were Max, I'd be 200% done. I'd jump out the flippin' window or something because that is scary as heck. But thankfully, Max is a protagonist and just assumes it was a dream. He realizes he's late for school, makes up a speedy clothes-changing technique and names it after himself, and parkours all the way downstairs where he grabs his signature, Scooter, and starts off towards school. After observing the beautiful scenery, Sam sends another text to make him think about his feelings. But Max texts while scooting and ends up falling off the side of the hill. This is not something you should try at home. Max even makes a point about not trying stuff like that at home in a later chapter. But he isn't technically home, so he can do whatever he wants. He lands on top of a red-headed fellow, and we meet our 4 favorite bullies: Animal Planet Shark Week, Scarface, and the Cryptid Hunter, the required muscle component of bullying, and Small Green Hoodie Friend, who's probably killed a man. Shark Week is okay for a reason that's explained later in the comic, but Max is definitely not okay because he suddenly sees a weird purple thing on Johnny's head that isn't his hair dye. Fun fact, the author of this comic, Zack Morrison, is keeping Johnny's real hair color a secret. I, for one, am hoping his hair color is blonde or a light brown, because he dyes his eyebrows too, and if his hair is dark, he'll have to put bleach near his eyes, and safety is clearly the #1 priority with these kids. Johnny thinks Max is making fun of him and sicks his gang on him. A cool chase scene ensues, where Johnny's gang uses the friendship fusion, but gets bested by a can of soup. Also, a girl walks by who can see the bizarre octopus thing that Max saw earlier. This is an example of foreshadowing. Max begins to see more of the purple things while running from Johnny's gang, but they quickly disappear. So, like any normal person, he just ignores the problem and decides to deal with it later. Foreshadowing. When Max arrives at school, another girl shows up, this one with more deviant ideas about ethics. Her name is Susie, and she and her friend/assistant Colin offer Max a tour of the school in exchange for an interview with him. He agrees and they set off. Colin is probably the only responsible character in the entirety of Paranatural, but like any good story, Paranatural can't have too many responsible characters, or the plot will get impeded, because watching middle schoolers do dangerous things makes things way more fun than watching competent adults deal with them. Also, foreshadowing. When Max mentions he sees see-through purple things, Susie throws a pencil into Dimitri's hair. Then Susie tries to get Max to join the journalism club. This is probably her way of low-key threatening Max to join the club. Max is almost done with his interview when he gets stuck in a crowd behind Susie, but it turns out the crowd never existed in the first place. Susie leaves Max with a schedule, and the kid from foreshadowing earlier shows up and laughs at Max instead of explaining why he's going crazy. This kid is kind of a jerk, as seen in later chapters. Nothing happens in Mr. Garcia's class except for Max meets people that turn out to be important later. They are Orange Muppet, probably doesn't care about you, leader of the middle school rebellion, kid who probably put that bleach from earlier too close to his eyes, and Normal Kid. Max contemplates what the heck just happened to him, and Bleach Kid doesn't help. Therefore, koalas do not exist. Would make a great meme in the fandom, just saying. Anyway, Max goes to Map, where he meets Shark Week again, gets into another fight, and calls down the wrath of Miss Baxter. Max proceeds to parkour away from his problems. Meanwhile, Jerk Kid from earlier shows up and walks into a mysterious room, where he conveniently refuses to use any terminology that we learn later in the chapter in what would be a perfect conversation to use them. Whatever teacher is in the room decides that, instead of being helpful and not damaging this new kid's mental state, he too is going to be a jerk and not tell Max why he's going crazy. The year Paranatural takes place in is conveniently scratched out. Angry Band Kid is straight up my favorite character also. Foreshadowing. And the mysterious girl from earlier shows up. She appears to be talking to a ghost who has magic butterfly powers, and instead of helping him, decides to be a jerk and eat her lunch like a normal person. In the cafeteria, Max wants to sit with his new friends, but then Johnny decides to be a jerk and threaten his life, so he gets forced into sitting with the journalism club. Max tells them he's considering joining the activity club, and Susie histrionically explains why she hates the activity club, because middle schoolers are honestly even more petty than high schoolers, all the while going through that "rawr means I love you" and dinosaur phase. In the next class, there's more foreshadowing, and in only one panel, which is really impressive. Also, I want that hang in their Beowulf poster. Max isn't feeling it when their teacher comes in like a spaz. Mr. Starchman explains that he gives out Starchman stars in his class that can be traded in for prizes. This is important later, but right now the only important thing is the fact that you can win a little Starchman plushie, and I think that's adorable. After class, Max leaves, only to find Johnny again, who wants to settle a score. Max gets angry, fights him, and loses, but he and Johnny become sort of friends, and I think this is where the popular ship bully magnet comes from, but I don't get why, because they pretty much just had a fight to the non-literal death, which wouldn't make me want to date anyone, but hey, whatever floats your boat. Johnny makes a weird reference to beating up walls, and Max leaves before he becomes the wall in Johnny's metaphor. Jerk Kid from earlier sees him and actually tries not to be a jerk, but is stopped by Jerk Teacher, who wears sunglasses indoors, which is really weird, and I wouldn't recommend it to anyone. Literally, the only other character I can think of who wears sunglasses indoors is Dave Strider from Homestuck, and honestly, who wants to be Dave Strider? The answer is nobody. Mr. Spender, the sunglasses teacher, starts class, but Max is distracted by the fact that Puff the Magic Dragon is outside the window making weird eyes at him. Mr. Spender calls out Max for not paying attention and tells him to see him after class. The girl from earlier draws a picture and then makes a cryptic remark to Mr. Spender. Mr. Spender makes Max go to the office later, where we see Jerk Kid, who's arguably less of a jerk now, being called Isaac by the mysterious girl, Isabel. They refer to ghosts, spirits, and tools, all of which are explained later. Ed has the message from the paper airplane he got in foreshadowing earlier. Everyone makes fun of Isaac. Ed goes off solo. Max forgets Ed's name, like, come on, Max, Ed remembered your name, and now you look like a big jerk. Ed starts fighting a giant bat with a magic paintbrush, which sounds like a great vampire anime, while Isabel goes to join the fight. Max sees the bat and Isabel rushing after it. Realizing he might not be crazy after all, he follows. Isabel realizes what is happening to Max and hugs him while running, which is actually really impressive considering I can barely talk while running. But she decides that to protect him, he has to be somewhere safe and shoves him in the closet from foreshadowing. While Isabel continues to fight the bat, Max gets a call from his friend Doghouse, who calls him out on getting wrecked by a small cheerful girl. It is also seen that Dad Puckett was actually a good parent all along, because Max does have a smartphone, giving him 2 phones, making Dad Puckett a great dad. More foreshadowing. The bat is now massive and way crazier than it was before. The fight starts getting interesting when Max breaks out of the closet he was locked in, because why consider that you have no training and will probably be eaten by a giant bat you saw when you can destroy the closet doors and get no answers anyway, because which way did the girl go? Max doesn't know where Isabel went, he was locked in the closet. He finds himself face to face with the bat. Despite being a protagonist, it appears Max is not the chosen one, yet. Also, Isaac's words, the bat is a tool, still debated by the fandom, either meaning that baseball bat is a vessel of ghosts, or, wow, the bat we're fighting is a real jerk face. Max, fearing for his life, whacks the bat with his bat and destroys it. Everyone heads back to the club room. A gorgeous scene of the supernatural is shown. Paranatural is written over the activity club's sign, and Max stops making snarky comments for a moment when he realizes that he's most likely not hallucinating. Inside, Mr. Spender explains that one becomes a spectral by seeing purple wisps called shades. Isaac picks up the dialogue by explaining that once you are a full spectral, you see them in full. They are categorized as either ghosts or spirits. Everyone makes fun of Isaac. Mr. Spender explains that they make spectral energy, and when Max tries to get information on how you become a spectral, such examples include near-death experience, prolonged exposure to supernatural phenomena, and a diet obnoxiously high in citrus, Mr. Spender waves him off, so Max makes a snarky comment again. Ed and Isabel are introduced, and everyone makes fun of Isaac. Ed and Isabel show off tools, which are everyday objects that possess supernatural powers. Mac freaks the heck out because, let's be honest, the activity club is not helping him at all. Mr. Spender explains that the bat he has is a tool and gives him superpowers, which makes Max stop and listen because that would be cool as heck. But Mr. Spender explains stuff badly, and Isaac in turn makes fun of Mr. Spender, and Max runs off, taking the baseball bat tool with him. Once outside, Susie sees Max exchanging phone numbers with the activity club and pretty much threatens to blow up his house because most middle school grudges end in arson and a triple homicide. However, this wouldn't be that advantageous because Mayview is a small town and Max's house is probably the only convenience store in the town, meaning if Susie blew it up, she'd probably never get cheap snacks ever again. Max returns home to find his dad and sister having a lightsaber duel. He reflects on his day in Mayview in rainbow colors.